You'll need a deep 9-inch pie plate, a bowl for mixing, 4 medium eggs or 3 large eggs, 1½ cups of 2% milk, 1/3 cup of flour, about 1/4 cup of sun-dried tomatoes, sea salt, 2 teaspoons of thyme, and 1 cup of caramelized onion. I've also done a video demonstrating how to make caramelized onions in case you're looking for a point of reference. You'll also need about 1 cup of finely shredded cheese. I used a Dutch aged cheese. Something like Monterey or a nice Gouda would work really well here. Begin by soaking your sun-dried tomatoes in some boiling hot water. I only do this for about 10 minutes just to put a bit of moisture back into the tomatoes. And since I'm not using the soaking water in the recipe, soaking them overnight really isn't necessary. This is just to get them slightly more pliable. After the 10 minutes, lay them on a clean paper towel to absorb the excess water. And then transfer them to a cutting board, giving them a fine chop. Next, separate your eggs. I use the back of a butter knife to make a sharper and more evenly cracked edge, which helps to restrain the yolk a bit more easily. Also, don't try to get every last drop of egg white, because a drop of egg yolk in the egg whites is more problematic than a bit of leftover whites in the yolks. Set aside the egg whites and have the egg yolks nearby. Measure out 1½ cups of cold milk and then stir in 1/3 cup of flour until there are no longer any dry clumps of flour floating or sticking around the edges of the container. Pour this mixture into a cold pan and proceed by turning on the fire beneath it to medium heat. At this point, also add just about a teaspoon of salt or less, because between the sun-dried tomatoes and the cheese, it doesn't need very much. As it heats up, you'll see that it begins to thicken relatively quickly. Once it begins to coat the stirring utensil that you're using, add the chopped sun-dried tomatoes. Stir them in, dispersing them evenly throughout, and then drop the heat down to low. Add 2 tablespoons of the hot milk and sun-dried tomato mixture to the egg yolks in order to temper them so that they don't scramble when you add them to the hot pan. Pour the now tempered egg mix into the pan's remaining milk and tomato mixture, and stir it together until it becomes smooth again. This will also thicken up quite a bit. Proceed to whisk and fluff the egg whites until they become stiff peaks. Sprinkle in the thyme and then gradually begin to fold in the tomato custard mix. The gentlest way to fold in the custard is to continually make sure that your spatula makes contact with the bottom of the bowl, thereby lifting the custard back to the top. Once you've folded in all of the custard mix, fold in about 2/3 of the shredded cheese. Have a lightly blind baked pie crust ready to fill and sprinkle the remaining cheese on the bottom of the crust. I do this to give the bottom of the quiche a bit of body, and if you're baking this without a crust, you could also simply sprinkle the bottom of a buttered baking dish with cheese as well. Transfer the filling to the crust, making sure that the filling meets the sides of the crust. Once the filling is relatively level, evenly disperse the caramelized onions over the surface of the quiche. It's not the easiest thing to do, but just do the best you can so that when you do slice the quiche, each piece will have a bit of caramelized onion on top. Place the quiche in a 360-degree oven on a mid-level rack for about 25 minutes, or until the outer crust becomes golden brown. The quiche will still have a bit of wiggle to it, and it won't actually deflate very much. It's a very light dish in spite of the caramelized onions and cheese, and I usually serve it as dinner with a warm vegetable along with homemade applesauce with cinnamon. But it also makes a great brunch item. Let me know if you give it a try.